Hey, everybody, and welcome to Bacon and Coffee. And we are going to get started. I've got a great guest today. You guys are going to enjoy this. We're going to have fun. We're going to learn a bunch of stuff, and this is going to be deep, dude. So here we go. I'm going to start with a 30-second count. All right, welcome everybody to Bacon and Coffee, and we cannot get this party started without a little digital caffeine and pork. Here we go. All right. And we have a great guest today. His name is Tim Ash. He's coming to us from San Diego, California. Dude, I am jealous. How's the weather out in San Diego?
No bad days. You know, that's the way it is. That's our motto. That's how we roll.
It's a beautiful thing, man. So anyways, I got this. I had you on the podcast. That's why I asked you on, because I loved our combo. We had a great time. And I got this thing in the mail. It's what I call lumpy mail. And it is your, I just love this. I mean, when I opened up my mailbox, that thing really stood out. And this is your book called Primal Brain. There it is. Unleash
Your Primal Brain. That's right.
I unleash my dog every once in a while, but my primal brain, I've never been able to get it unhooked. So, but before we get started, because I want people to get to know you and everything like that. But I've got a trivia question for you. Okay, you ready? Okay,
yeah.
So I have to put on my glasses for this because I got to be able to see it here. And by the way, guys, if you have any comments or questions, put them in the chat window. I can see the stuff on LinkedIn. It's a little hard to get to Facebook, but I will try. But anyways, okay, so who said this? All right, this is a quote, and it's one of two people. All right, so it is Gunga Galunga Gunga. Gunga Galunga. Who said that? And what does it mean?
That sounds like something that the Oompa Loomps would say on Willy Wonka. I have no idea.
Okay. Well, there's two people who said it. One is Carl Speckler, and the other one is the Dalai Lama. And that is from Caddyshack. And what it means is you will receive total consciousness on your deathbed. So you got that going for you. So
wow, right on. This is really freaky because the next book that I'm reading on my nightstand right now is by a Tibetan monk. So good. I guess I know what I need to study this weekend.
Yes, and
you never know when you're going to leave this plane of reality. You know,
exactly. Yeah. You definitely do. Deboarding the plane of reality is definitely different than deboarding the plane of Southwest. So, anyways, Tim, tell us about you. Tell us about who you are, what you do, how did you get to where you're at. Just give us kind of a brief overview, and then we'll dig into some deep stuff, man. Because we're going to be talking caveman. That's what we're going to do. All right, here we go.
Hopefully before caveman. Well, I was born in the former Soviet Union in Moscow, Russia, what's now Moscow, Russia. And my family emigrated to the U.S. when I was 8 years old. We moved around. My parents had a good second career as civil engineers, which was kind of the software engineers back in the day. And I ended up on a full ride University of California Regents scholarship on the beach in San Diego, California. And big surprise, that's why I never left. I mean, look, it's a top engineering school. There's a nude beach next door. The weather is always perfect. Boom, checks all my boxes.
Nice.
Yep. And then undergraduate, I studied computer science and cognitive science. And then I stayed for grad school in what would now be called machine learning or artificial intelligence, deep learning, that sort of thing. Neural networks was the my specialty. And then 7 years in, I quit and I started my first company after working for some soul-killing big defense contractors who shall remain unnamed. And I decided that I really wanted to jump on this internet thing because I didn't think it was going to be a flash in the pan. So shortly after Al Gore invented the interwebs back in 1995, I started the first internet consultancy to help launch new .coms essentially. And we did that, and then we switched to driving pay-per-click traffic, paid traffic to websites. And then we figured out that the bigger problem wasn't the traffic we were driving, it was the crappy websites. So my agency pivoted to becoming one of the first dedicated agencies for what's now known as conversion rate optimization or landing page optimization, essentially making websites more efficient. And so I wrote a couple of best-selling books on it and started what was called the Conversion Conference, an international conference series that ran for 10 years and continues to this day in the US, UK, and Germany. It's now called Digital Growth Unleashed, and you can look that up. I'm not involved in that. I got out of the agency business as well, sold it to partners. But when I did run the agency, my team helped create 1.2 billion in value for the Nestle's, Google's, Expedia's, and so on of the world. So that brings us up to the current spot in my life where I'm now focusing exclusively on keynote speaking, as you can tell from my badges on the back wall. I just launched a new LinkedIn learning class and, of course, the new book.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, dude. And yeah, you have quite the lanyard wall. I mean, I usually toss those things, but now I'm, and again,
you're regretting it, aren't you?
I am regretting it now. Yes, because it's like, okay, if I did what you did, I probably have a 4 foot by 4 foot square as opposed to an entire wall. But so I'm not worthy. No, but it's awesome, dude. So tell us about, how did you get into the primal brain, and what does the primal brain mean? Because when I think about I've got a handful of different questions I want to get into about that, but tell us about the concept and what it means and why people need to pay attention to it.
Well, when I arrived at UCSD, it really is an incredible university. It was launched only about 60 years ago, and it's now in the top 30 in the world because they started with a graduate school and then started letting in undergraduates. So they recruited all these Nobel laureates and math field medals winners, and then let in the riffraff like me. So it was this amazing interdisciplinary school. And so when I studied there, we broke down all the silos. One of the guys on my PhD committee was from the economics department. Another one was from linguistics. Another one was from electrical engineering, in addition to the computer science people and my advisor. And so I was studying always kind of the brain and cognition. I mean, when I was studying machine learning is trying to make machines, learn from example like the human brain does. So I've always been interested in how the brain works. So I kind of went into marketing, ran my agency, and now I've come back full circle to what I loved, which is how does the brain work, and explaining it to everyone, not just people that ended up being our clients at the agency.
So when it comes from a marketing, what do you mean by primal brain? I mean, primal brain is, when I think primal brain, again, it's the Gunga, Gadunga, Galunga, it's like, I'm thinking about, cavemen drawing things, but it's really kind of deeper than that, isn't it? It's kind of more of your reflexes and kind of thing.
Well, the way to think about it is we didn't just pop into existence like on the holodeck of the Enterprise or something on Star Trek.
We didn't?
Nope, sorry. That theory has been debunked. I mean,
we weren't put here by aliens?
Nope, fake news, sorry.
Really? Okay.
Nope. So it turns out we actually evolved. And if you want to understand what human beings are and how we work, you have to see all the stuff we picked up along the way. In a way, you have to retrace that complete evolutionary arc. So we share stuff with insects and with reptiles and with other mammals. And then there are definitely some bizarre things that evolved very recently that make us distinctly and uniquely human. And that's why we've successfully overrun the whole planet. But you basically have to understand, what are these pieces we picked up along the way that make us act? And they're not the rational brain. In the West, we have this long-standing bias going back to the ancient Greeks saying, well, man is a rational animal, and if we could only tame those wild horses of emotion, we'd be better off. Well, it turns out that rational, quote-unquote, conscious brain is only on in a tiny percentage of situations. And most of your life is handled on autopilot by the subconscious, subverbal parts of the brain, and it works really well. And that's what I call the primal brain.
That's awesome. So, okay, so the primal brain being, kind of the thing that drives us. Let's talk about it from a marketing standpoint. And here's the first question I want to kind of get to. And that is that, one of the things that I've studied, first and foremost, I mean, it's interesting the way that this all worked out. And I even forget who introduced this. How did we get introduced? Was it
Maybe Steve Weideman?
Steve Weideman? Thank you.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he's
great
a past
guy,
guest.
amazing guy. Yeah.
Yeah, great dude. I mean, usually that's how I get all my guests for the podcast is people recommend people, who have been the people that have been on the podcast, they recommend people. And that's usually the best way to get on the podcast. Hint, hint to everybody who's hitting me up,
Hey, I'm actually working on a new course on how to be a podcast guest. Because to promote the book, I've done about 60 in the last 6 months, and I used to run my own. And so, yeah, absolutely referrals to podcast hosts.
Absolutely. Because I mean, I get hit up by 50 different people a week, saying, hey, I've got this great guest for you. And, she bakes chocolate chip cookies, with amazing special interest groups. It's like,
has nothing to
did
do
you
with
listen
anything.
to my podcast? Yeah.
It's not really about food. Sorry.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I get bacon, all the time. People that want to come on, it's a cooking show, isn't it? No. But the thing about it is when you came on and when I interviewed you, I was actually I go down these rabbit holes. And the way I go down the rabbit holes is through Blinkist. And Blinkist is, because I'm an audiobook guy. I'm an auditory learner. Okay. We get into the brain. Yep. There are three kinds of learners. There are visual learners. There are tactile learners. There's audio learners. I am an audio learner.
Category, the people that never learn.
Like okay. Yeah. We I don't want to get political now. Let's not go there.
I didn't mean to, but okay.
But anyway, so but I listen to audiobooks. That's how I absorb stuff. I mean, I've written 5 books and I can't even read my own books. I could read a chapter of it, can't even understand it. It's just the way my head works. So and who knows why? It's like my dog can hear for 4,000 miles. I can't. But yeah, I mean, she could hear. Bottom line is, she could hear the neighbor opening up a snack bag. It's like woof. So, but the key thing about it is I was going down this kind of path when you came on, and it was like I was going back through ancient Greek philosophy. I mean, I started with Socrates.
Because everybody does that for fun, yeah.
Right, exactly. But it's kind of like what I'm really trying to figure out though is how do people think? It's really that's what it's about. I mean,
that's it. If you want to be successful at anything in life, you're understanding yourself, right? Having good relationships, having success in business. You have to understand how people think.
Exactly.
And so evolutionary psychology to me is the foundational part of that. I mean, this is how we came into being and all the little shortcuts our brain takes to make decisions and think.
Yeah, and there's, there's the religious side of things. Religion has been throughout the years just all over the place. I mean, between, what happened with, the ancient Greeks and gods and one of the kind of twisted ways this all worked out is when I was studying all that, I found out that Hades, who is the god of the underworld, ended up being
Pluto for the Romans. Yep.
Well, and some Venus too, because he was known as the morning star in a weird kind of way. So it's like when I started digging,
hermaphroditic Satan basically is what you're describing.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, so when I was doing my podcast, it came up on episode 666, and I decided, well, what do I do? Do I just let it go? Do I treat it like the 13th floor in a hotel? And what I decided to do was interview Satan himself. And
whoa.
Yeah, and
did you have sympathy for the devil?
I did have sympathy for him, and he said that Georgia has some good souls still left to steal, so he's not leaving there. He's
good to know.
He's really good about that. But the whole concept is, it's really about trying to understand, how we got where we're at through history, and you take it way back. That's the reason I want to bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. You're talking about culture, religion. Those are more recent overlays, obviously.
Right.
Knowledge has accelerated and continues to accelerate. And even back in the 1970s, futurist Alvin Toffler wrote a book called Future Shock, and it's about the acceleration of knowledge and all the crazy times we live in today. But the fact is, I'm talking about the basic operating system that all 8 billion of us on the planet share in common. It's the fact that we evolved, actually co-evolved, to spread culture that's of interest to me, not the particular, I'm talking about the operating system, not the software loaded on top of it, if you know what I mean.
Right, exactly. And then that's kind of the key of what we're talking about is just kind of understanding, understanding how we originally programmed. So let's go back to, the things that really get down to the root, and that is, the fight or flight. the basic emotions, and all of that has a lot to do when it comes to, how we market, how we buy, all those kind of things.
And incidentally, like I said, the book is not applied, and it's for all these different audiences: personal development, relationships, and business and leadership. Absolutely. Right. If you read it with that in mind, you'll pick up a lot of stuff. So I wrote it to be a generalist book, but I mean, this is how we made that $1.2 billion. If you read this with a marketing hat on, you're going to get a ton of stuff. So neuromarketing, I'm a huge fan. In fact, I just dropped the new introductory course on neuromarketing on LinkedIn Learning. So if you have access to that platform and want to know what kind of the marketing basics of some of this and how it applies, go watch my LinkedIn Learning class on neuromarketing.
So is that NLP style stuff, or is it different?
No, that's a little too specific, because that has to do with language and mimicking people. That's some of the stuff I talk about. But I mean, to answer your question, we're all motivated by the same kinds of things. We really are. I mean, so again, I'm not talking about whether you're male or female or non-binary. I'm not talking about whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, what culture you grew up in. Those are all overlays on top of this. But the fact that we are, for example, much more sensitized to pain and loss than we are to upside, that's an evolutionary thing. The fact that, or dopamine, we're talking about basic brain chemicals that make us happy. Most people think, oh, those are the 3 blinking dots on my instant messenger when someone's typing something back to me. So all these companies are learning to manipulate my dopamine. Well, guess what? We share dopamine with fruit flies, with freaking insects, going back several 100 million years. So there's nothing particularly human about dopamine. It's there to meter out energy and to see if we should pursue a goal. It's that simple. It's energy control. And if we don't get the goal we expect, it also very quickly adjusts our mental model in our brain and updates it to be more accurate next time. So that's it. That's what dopamine does. So again, we anthropomorphize things, which is a fancy way of saying we put human kind of stuff on top of it. It's not human. It's shared by a lot of the animal kingdom.
Well, and it goes back to the same kind of thing. It's like we want to talk to, I notice this all the time with dogs. We want to talk to dogs like a human, right? But they're not human. Right. They can't understand. I mean, most dogs can understand about 100 words, and that's it. There are certain dogs that can actually recognize 1,000 toys. There's certain dogs that can smell better than we can. They could smell cancer, cocaine, that's helpful. Is it happy? Not so happy. Right. But the bottom line is that, we want to overlay our emotions or overlay our own world. Now, this gets to another key point, which I wanted to talk to you about. And that is, and again, I'm going down the Blinkist route, and I started studying economy. Okay. And I started looking at economics, and what they talked about was the narrative of economics and how certain narratives take over the way that we think, and it doesn't necessarily have to be political.
Yeah, no, these are memes in the original sense of the word. That Dawkins, when he was writing about the selfish gene, he says any idea that can reproduce itself essentially has the quality of life, like a gene. So the world is flat was a popular meme for many years until it wasn't.
Right. Well, no, it's still there. I mean, there's
but at a low level circulating in the population. But
speaking of memes, the favorite meme I saw today was like, hey, for you flat earthers, they said day, night. They showed a globe day, night, and then they showed a light spot on the flat earth going day, 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 day. Yeah, it was one of those that just cracked me up.
Well, by the way, we'll hold that. Continue on, please, but hold the thought of like what makes us stick to stuff that's obviously not true. I'm glad to go down that rabbit hole.
And we're going to go down that rabbit hole because that's another piece that I want to go down. So getting into the economic side of things, they talked about, trickle down economics. It was something called the Laffer curve.
Very famous economist. Yep.
Right. Very famous economist. And all of a sudden that was like brought into light, and it was picked up by a couple of different people, and that was brought into economics. And there's absolutely no scientific data that says that actually works. It just became a theme, and that theme keeps going and going and going. So one of the things that they talked about was the narratives. And this is something that happens all the time is, there's always a fight to control the narrative. You know,
Yeah.
it's like what people believe is if you can get them to repeat it over and over and over again, like the chorus of a song, that's essentially what we're trying to do in a lot of ways,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
got
Like
milk.
yeah. Or the big lie, like, oh, the
Right.
election was stolen. Yeah.
Right.
The
Exactly.
most secure election with the highest voter participation. Yeah, sure, that was stolen.
Right.
And everybody except Donald Trump got elected, but it was a big conspiracy against him. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. Because all the other ones were actually, they weren't cheated on, and everything down below. But
Yeah.
that
But
again,
by
that
the way, this is like just as a quick editorial thing. Like this is we joke about it, but this is actually this disconnect from reality. I personally believe is going to shake the foundations of our democracy
Mhm.
and all advanced democracies in the world. This is no joke. This living in isolated media bubbles.
No, and I don't disagree with you at all. But again, it gets back to controlling the narrative.
Mhm.
The key thing is if you control the narrative, you control the person, right? And one of the things that I see is that people have these, they have these songs, these narratives playing in their head. And if you can kind of latch onto it, kind of like merging onto a highway, all of a sudden, you start to control how they think and what they
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah, well, let's dig at the mechanisms behind that a little bit. So
Sure.
if we look at early life, I mean, what do you need to reproduce? Well, you can copy yourself. That's viruses. They're still with us today, a really effective form of life,
Right.
right? And then once you get to sexual reproduction, you have animals that can survive by themselves. So, a fish spawns 1,000 little eggs and most of them get eaten by other fish. But if you survive to adulthood, there's not a lot of caretaking or parenting going on. Right. So there's kind of independent animals. It's like you're on your own, Junior.
Right.
And then there's mammals evolved to operate in herds. We're weaker individually, but we have the benefit of the group protection and all of that stuff. Right. So we can spend more time nurturing. And human beings are at the extreme of that. We're pretty much useless when we're born, and we're not pre-wired to do anything. Like a giraffe drops out of mom, it can walk within a half hour in many cases and
Right.
follow mom within a day. Human beings can't walk for a year on average.
Right.
So when you think about it, we're basically, really rely on group protection. And so we're the most extreme of mammals, by far the most social, by far the most helpless at birth. And we do it in order to spread culture. And because we've placed one big evolutionary bet on basically saying, we're not going to be pre-wired physically for our environment. We're going to learn about the environment from our surrounding tribe. And that's what's going to give us an edge in life. And so the history of human beings is actually a history of group on group warfare or conflict.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So the most important thing that we can understand about people is being tribal is more important than being right.
Right.
And that's what
Exactly.
you're seeing activated in our politics right now. So if you're not a good tribal member, we will sanction you. There's these escalating sanctions from gossip to denial of mating opportunities, ostracism, banishment, and even death if you're not playing by the team rules. And so we're not just so we assume we live in a world of social norms and particular rules, even if we don't know what they are in a particular situation.
Right.
And so really what's important is that if, especially in times of uncertainty, people will fall back on their tribal knowledge as opposed to what their eyes and ears are telling them, than direct knowledge and truth and facts, because that's what's helped us evolve and survive over 200,000 years, the distinctly human part of our evolution. And so, dictators activate this. There are these famous rules that were tracked down, the 14 rules of fascism. And it's true, anytime you want to activate them, you just go down this checklist. And that's what's happening today with a combination of polarized politics and social media.
Absolutely. And so going back to let's talk a little bit about relationships. I'm in a relationship. It's an addictive relationship. It's hard. And I don't know if I could break it, but it's with Amazon. And so, yeah, I purchase a lot, but one of the side benefits of being in a relationship with Amazon is they feed you great information. They do that with, Amazon Prime Video for free. And there's a great series, if you've never seen it, it's called The History of Us.
Yes.
And it's amazing. And when you sit there and watch it, it goes through, and you're so right what you said. I mean, you are so spot on. And people, if you haven't haven't watched this, I really recommend you watch it, because it goes from, cavemen to modern day. I mean, it tells the true story behind everything that has been fantasized. I mean, we believe that Christopher Columbus came over and discovered America. No, what he did is he went over to, he discovered an island and basically brought, and brought disease and killed a bunch of people.
Right. Oh, this pristine new world that we settled in the Americas, that was due to the fact that smallpox killed 95% of people in the New World.
Exactly.
After we got here.
Yeah, and the whole pilgrims thing, that we've learned about, the pilgrims coming over in 1492. I can't remember, it was the Indian's name, but the dude actually studied, the Indians studied in England and spoke English.
Yeah. Well, incidentally, I mean, the Mexico City pre-Columbian was 15 million people, bigger than any city in Europe.
Right.
There were 50 million living in the Mississippi Delta. They all just died of disease. And there's a great book, by the way, by Jared Diamond called Guns, Germs, and Steel, which basically says it's the initial conditions and the advantages one group has over another that determines their success, and nothing inherently different about them.
Well, the one that stuck with me during this whole thing is it was basically the invasion of Constantinople, which was the Christian. It was kind of like the Christian bastion in the middle of all of this other war going on, and it was like the trading route. It was the way that they were able to have one kind of central place to be able to get all the trading routes to.
Yeah, it's Istanbul. It's the modern names. Yeah, it's basically the gate between Europe and the Middle East. Yeah.
Exactly. So what ended up, and you living there, you probably knew more about it than I did. But one of the things that they showed is, since they couldn't break into the city because the gates were too strong, is what they were doing is that people that had bubonic plague, they're basically, when they died, they would throw them on a catapult and they would throw them
into the city. Yeah, start a new plague. Yeah, right on. Yeah, they tried to attack that city, I believe, 30 times unsuccessfully before it finally collapsed.
Right. And what's amazing is just how far people will go in war to get what they want, and so that primal, when you sit here and you think about today's modern society, this is nothing different than it's ever been. So, now
it's just, except the spread of information and how this tribalism quickly forms. I mean, with a profit motive and massive monopoly power, which we're not regulating, we're letting these tech companies basically do mind control for profit.
Right.
And it's not cool. It's not going to lead to anything good. It's already been disastrous for us. I mean, the thing is, bad information has been shown on social media, real fake news, as opposed to, Trump's fake news, spread 6 times faster than true stuff.
Right.
6 times faster.
Well, that's because they figured out how to get to your primal brain and trigger something that makes sense. And that's why I wanted to bring it up. So this is a long kind of way to get to the point, is why does that work?
Because, like I said, in times of fear and uncertainty, we will activate our primal knowledge. That's the key insight. We'll fall back on the culture that we learned when we were younger. And so if you know someone's culture, it's very easy to activate it. So all you have to do is create the preconditions of uncertainty and fear. And that's what's happening in our politics right now, and why it's gotten so polarized.
Okay, so take that to, you're working with Google, you're working with, whoever, Monsanto or whatever. Obviously they're trying to control the narrative. I mean, this happened even with cigarettes in the 1940s. Somebody said that cigarettes are bad for you, they cause cancer. The cigarette companies hired a bunch of their own scientists that said, no, they're wrong. And they had more money to spend.
They said, and we'll add mint flavor so it tastes better.
Right, exactly. So then they were able to promote the fact that, all the scientists, the true scientists, were wrong because they threw more money at the problem.
It's just like the fossil fuel industry and climate change denial. Yeah. I guess where my politics lands, but I'm sorry, it's on the side of truth and common sense. Yeah.
I'm all about truth too. I don't like manipulation in marketing. I mean, I believe in, the whole concept of running a business to me is help people. That's it. If you could solve somebody's problem and do it in a logistic way that doesn't hurt other people in the process, you're not stepping on people to get to the end game, and you're bettering society. Isn't that what we're here for? You know, some people believe it's, you know, he dies with the most toys wins. Other people believe it's, you know, more along the lines of, you know, what am I going to leave behind as a legacy? You can pick and choose what's right for you. You know, nobody's going to sit here and judge you. I got into a conversation with a guy the other day. I was walking my dog. He was walking his dog. And he was going off on a certain celebrity saying, I can't believe they're doing this. And they're just, you know, it's so wrong. And it's all this other stuff. And I said to him flat out, I said, this person doesn't affect your life. This person doesn't affect my life.
Bingo. By the way, that's another. So a lot of what's going on in our society has to do with the fact that we evolved to be in tribes of 100 to 200 people wandering around on the savannah of East Africa.
Pareto's principle is 150, right?
Or
not Pareto. No, not Pareto. I'm sorry. It's Dunbar's number.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's 100 to 200. It's actually that's the range. Okay. And most human societies form into groups of that because that was the size of our tribe when we were nomads.
Right.
And basically we're wandering around. Most of those people we were loosely related to. So that's all of the reasons that we form tribes is because it's our genes trying to protect themselves. These are your relatives. That's why you want to protect them. So they're your uncle, nephew, niece, whatever the relationship is, cousin, they were still related to you. And so we actually learn culture from people that are the same gender, the same color as us, that babble in nonsense syllables in our dialect, even before we understand what the meaning of words is. I mean, yes, we learn from authorities and people we recognize as maybe having useful knowledge, but a lot of who we learn from has to do with people like us. That's what it comes down to, because again, that's a kind of a proxy for these people are my relatives.
Right.
And that was important genetically speaking.
And back to, the two major things is the 80-20 rules, Pareto's principle. And
but Dunbar's number,
Dunbar's number, he actually was an anthropologist or something like that out of England. But the funny thing about it is
Robin Dunbar.
Yes, thank you. And there was a study done in a major corporation that found out that if they built factories of 150 people, they operated more efficiently, more people stayed, and they had a better work environment. And they actually made more money.
The guys that make Gore-Tex. So what they did is they had little plants, and they would build a parking lot with about 150 spaces in it. And once people start parking on the grass, they'd open up a new plant. Okay, because the nice thing about that tribalism is you can have a personal relationship with people at that scale. Mm-hmm. You can't when there are thousands or millions of people involved, because we essentially operate in two spheres: the relational sphere with our tribal members, and then the stranger or transactional sphere with others. And the relational sphere, we know we're going to have ongoing relationships with them. There's obligations, there's gift giving and things like that. As soon as you have dealing with strangers, then we say, yeah, I don't know if I'll ever see you again. I don't know if you'll screw me over. And so we have a completely different rule. We become more selfish, more wary, and more independent when we deal with strangers or mention money, because that's what you do with strangers. I mean, let me give you a quick example. Let's say you're an expert in marketing. And you charge $1,000 an hour, and I come to you, I'm your friend, and I say, hey, Brian, I know you're an expert in marketing, and you normally charge $1,000 an hour, but can you, I have this new project I'm working on. Can you help me out for $100 an hour? Okay, now that's scenario one. Scenario two is I come to you and say, Brian, I know you're like this world-class expert at marketing and you charge $1,000 an hour. I'm starting this new venture. Can you help me out for a little bit and get me started? I'd really love a super smart download from a guy like you. Now, here's the weird thing. Economists would normally predict that you're better off with $100 an hour than you would be giving your time away for free. But in reality, I know how you would have reacted to that. In the first scenario, you would have said, Tim, you're a cheap son of a bitch. Go F yourself. In the second one, you'd probably say, oh, absolutely. I'd be glad to help you because you're my friend. In one sphere, you're operating in relational kind of relationship, and the other transactional. As soon as you mention money, you're dealing with strangers that can't be trusted.
Right. And the other side of the coin is when you're giving something, you feel like there's the law of reciprocity. Somehow or another, you'll get something back, as opposed to when somebody hands you $100, you feel undervalued.
That's exactly right. And that's such a key point. And this applies to marketing quite a bit, because what most people don't realize is we're super cooperative apes. I mean, if we didn't cooperate, at a genetic level, we're pro-social.
Exactly.
We're pro-social, and we want to help and generally cooperate. Unless you're a sociopath and something misfired, genetically or early childhood, you want to help people.
Right.
And so what most people don't understand is that when you give someone a gift, it obligates the receiver.
Right.
You ever have, like, back in the day, Hare Krishnas were allowed to solicit at airports for change, and they're like,
Yes.
"Oh, here, sir, have a nice paper flower I just made. Can I have
Right.
some spare change?" Well, you just gave them 50 cents for a paper flower that cost them a penny to make. So they're better off, but them giving you the flower, even if you hate them and you don't want to give them anything, obligates you to give them something reliably of equal or greater value back. So if you want to obligate someone, give them a gift. And marketers don't do that enough.
See, now I was born and raised New York Catholic. My mother was a travel agent for guild trips. And to this day, I know I'm going to hell. If there is a hell, I'm going to see Lucifer. The reason is because I was down in Nogales, Arizona and Mexico, right on the border.
Yep.
And I walked in, and this little kid handed me this checklets, and I said, "Thank you." And I walked away, and everybody in the entourage with me looked at me and said, "What the hell are you doing?" It's like, you gave me a chiclet. You're supposed to give him money. The whole purpose of it is to give him money. And I'm going, it was like my brain was off.
This is ninth circle of hell stuff.
Right. Yeah. But it was, I know it's like brain overload, because, you're walking across a border. You're looking at these other things. This kid is attacking you with chiclets. And all of a sudden you turn into this monster because you didn't hand the kid $5 for a chiclet.
Yep. The social pressure and the need to give back. Absolutely. Yeah. So, when you think about it, when you come to someone's house for dinner, you always bring a gift, maybe a bottle of wine or something like that. To come empty handed in any culture, is considered the worst thing you can absolutely do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's take this to the other extreme. Okay. So now we understand the Dunbar side of things with the 150, the tribal side.
Well, it's actually, like I said, to be accurate, it's more like 100 to 200, something in that range.
Right. And 150 is dead center in the middle. So that's why I use that number.
It's actually, that number is 148, but hey, sorry, I'm being all technical.
No, that's okay. You're way too technical. Yeah. This is, if I have to remember things that, exact, I'm going to screw up.
Actually, before you move on, let's talk about what that actually means. One of the big implications of that group size is, what's our brain for? So we think of the logical brain, the conscious brain, as being the cerebral cortex, the two hemispheres on top, right? Well, that's the social network. What that does is it helps us model our social environment and to get all the benefits of being in the tribe without all of the downsides of being in the tribe and the hierarchy and status and all of that. So it's to update our social network. And so it's things like, okay, we were introduced by my friend and your friend, Steve Weideman, who was on your show. And if I did a crappy job on your podcast, then he would get back to him, and his daughter wouldn't want an internship with my company. It's for that kind of stuff. That's what our brain does. It's not 2 + 2 is 4. It's not putting landers on Mars. It's nothing like that. That's personally, I think that's done by a few super smart people. The rest of us are spreading culture and updating our social information. Right. So literally the second you stop thinking of a computational or planning task, you go back to modeling the social world. That's what our brains are for.
Which totally makes sense. And also to kind of kill the dual hemisphere thing. A lot of people think left brain, right brain. There is no such thing, right?
Yeah, another myth busting moment. Let's do it.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, so there are specialized areas in the two hemispheres of the cerebral cortex, but between them, there's this super highway of information called the corpus callosum, and basically they act as one unit, but there's not like a logical Mr. Spock part and a creative side. That's total bull. The best way to think about the brain is there's the cerebral cortex. Below that is the limbic system, kind of the emotional memory stuff that we share with mammals. And below that is the brainstem part that essentially keeps the lights on, keeping you breathing, your heart beating, digestion, all of those really, really primal things. So it's one kind of Band-Aid on top of a fix, on top of an update.
Right. So it's basically 3 layers. It's kind of like, Neapolitan ice cream. But the bottom line is I like to think of the top cortex as strawberry, because that's my favorite.
Mine's pistachio. Sorry.
Well, that's not Neapolitan, dude. You know,
I know, I know.
pistachio has its own.
Yeah, but you mentioned something about Catholic, so it must be an Italian thing.
Exactly, it is. Okay, so let's go to another concept. I'm so having fun with this, man. It is a blast.
Oh, me too. And I mean, I knew you were Italian anyway. You're the people whose names end with vowels.
Right, exactly. Yeah. The difference between a basilica and a basilica, one's a church, one's a leaf. You know, it's a basil. So basically, if you go to the basilica, you're going to the church of basil.
It's a, and then it goes great with bacon.
It does go great with bacon. Yeah, if you have bacon, bacon inside of your spaghetti.
I like
sauce.
mine on caprese. That's the basil. Oh, the yummy.
Oh yeah, it's excellent. Yeah, nothing like
actually with burrata, not with mozzarella, but burrata.
Burrata, yeah, and a good pesto sprinkled on top of it is phenomenal. Back to
my brother from another mother.
You got it, my man. And you're from Russia, and I'm from New York. So it's like,
hey, I can be from New York, no problem.
Yeah. Wicked hardcore. Go to Boston. So, so we've looked at the, kind of how to bring it back into the tribe of 150. That's what our brain tells us that we need to do. Okay. Yeah. The thing about social media and the thing about, the world that we're living in today, and this is the thing that everybody wants, is they want to communicate with 1 million people. They want to have a tribe of 1 million people. They want to be popular in social media to 1 million people. They want to be a social media influencer. They want to do all this stuff. Tell us why that is so hard and why it's a waste of time.
All right. Well, I want to go back to your neighbor, the dog walker that was talking about the celebrity. So the problem is, we're talking about if we lived on the savannah, we had our tribe, a few dozen people. And once in a while, we'd meet other tribes and there'd be wild orgies for genetic mixing reasons. And people would go off and sleep with each other for genetic diversity. So we don't inbreed too much. Okay. But in general, we were around our small group. And so all that social information I was talking about is important. Knowing gossip is the glue that held small tribes together. It's not some low level activity. A lot of people look down on it. It was essential to our tribal survival and cohesion. It's sharing social information. That's what gossip is. The problem is it misfires in large societies. So what Jay-Z does, I could give an F about, okay? But people treat them as if they're part of their tribe. That's the misfiring. That's why you have Us Magazine and People Magazine and Entertainment Weekly and all of these shows that are all obsessed with the Kardashians, because we basically, the only frame of reference we have for them, since we hear about them all the time, is they must be in our tribe.
Right.
But sharing currency about people we don't actually know and who are not in our tribe is a total misfire and waste of our time. You're not influencing Jay-Z by talking about him. He could give a crap about you. He doesn't even know you exist.
Well, exactly. Go look at their Twitter account. I mean, they basically follow 5 people and have 4 million people following them.
That's right. And then half their posts are promotional ads.
Right.
Here's me holding up this glass.
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the things, again, going back to the guilt trips, if Bill Gates and Melinda Gates and Jeff Bezos can't keep a marriage together, how the heck can I? I mean, it's like they're the richest people in the world.
Well, you know what? Money doesn't buy happiness. There's a perfect example, but also have a whole chapter on gender differences and how our sexuality evolved. The expectation that people are lifelong monogamous or that marriage is some ultimate thing, that's definitely a cultural overlay. The fact is, at a species level, there are only 3% of mammals that are monogamous. We're not the exception. We're not in that group. So to think that anyone's going to stay together forever and you're going to meet all their needs with a big cozy blanket, and no, it doesn't work like that. So I'm not surprised then. I mean, by the way, here we are again gossiping about people we don't freaking know.
Well, that's what I'm
about Bill Gates. He's not my pal, and you don't know Melinda too well either. No. Unless you're the cause of their marriage breakup, but that's another story.
Well, I'm not going to go there because I don't want to start any rumors. But going back to what we're talking about those 1 million people that everybody has this desire. You want to be accepted by everybody, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to, when we're talking about our tribe and you're dealing with 150 people, I always say that it's better to be accepted by 10 people than 10 million. Mm-hmm. Right? Because
there's different kinds of acceptance. So if you're talking about idea spread and behavior change, this has been studied really well. And it's not in my book, but I'll just share this notion. There's kind of weak ties and there's strong ties. The strong ties are what change your behavior. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you want to, let's talk politics. You're Democrat and someone's going to convince you to vote Republican, not that there's anything like that left, that the Trump cult is the cult of Trump is what's left. But anyway, if someone were to convince you to do that, they would have to be people in your tribe, your immediate 150. Several of them would have to act on you to get you to change behavior. If you just want to spread knowledge or ideas, then it's okay to have these influencers with 1 million people. But an influencer will never change your behavior until it becomes popular in your immediate circle. An influencer is actually, you can think of them as being kind of conservative. They will not propagate new ideas. And here's the reason: they have too much social capital to lose. Imagine if Oprah went on her show and said, hey, pedophilia is the greatest thing ever, right? Let's rape little children. I mean, she'd lose all of her followers. So she's got this huge thing to lose. So influencers that have large audiences are going to be behind the curve on just about every issue because they can't afford to piss off their tribe.
Right.
So what you really need are kind of like activists in your immediate vicinity showing you by example that behavior needs to change, and only then will you change complex behaviors.
Okay, so let's dig even deeper into this and kind of look at it from a what we're trying to do is figure out, how do we control the narrative? How do we get people to, buy products and change their minds, look at things differently? I mean, really, that's what it's about, is how do we influence people? And so what you're saying is it's much easier to influence a smaller group than it is to influence a bigger group because...
No, I'm actually saying you can't influence at will. It's actually, if you think of this mass of people you're trying to influence, a lot of change starts on the periphery. And once it reaches critical mass there, it goes to the center. And then if there's an influencer that they can amplify it and bounce it back and broadcast it, but it actually starts, at the sides with a dedicated group of people that want to change what's going on.
Right. Well, so explain that in the vaccine microchip world. Okay. We know that there is no microchip in a vaccine. We know mRNA is, or I think it's mRNA. We know that
RNA,
yeah. So we know that it's not going to change your DNA. It doesn't contain a virus. I mean, these are all, basic things. And if somebody disagrees with me, cool.
Moderna 2X. Here we go.
I got the funky cold Moderna too, man. I got the same thing. But the key thing is that all of a sudden we're talking about microchips. It's changing your DNA. It's doing all these.
Okay. So where do these why do these stories happen? So let's kind of combine this with marketing as opposed to going to social policy and
sure.
So the thing that most marketers get wrong is what they do. They build a product. There are a lot of quote unquote product led companies, and let's scrum and have the minimum viable product, and we'll iterate until we find what the market wants, and then we'll sell it to everyone. All 8 billion people on the planet need our crap, right?
Right, exactly.
That's the typical marketing dream, and it never works. And here's what works instead. You have to actually find a group, find a very niche audience. Then you have to understand what their values are. And then you design products and messaging to attract those people. That's the right sequence, which marketers get completely backwards, which is why they're flailing and failing a lot of the time. So if you think you can sell it to 8 billion people on the planet, unless you're Coca-Cola, you're wrong. It ain't happening. And even Apple, which is the most valuable company on the planet right now. There's Apple people, and then there's, Samsung people like me, because I actually, like to get work done on my phone, So now think about what I just did. I pissed off every Apple tribal person in your audience.
You're never coming back on my podcast.
Oh, that's right. It's a jihad now. Okay, over which phone? Because you're an Apple true believer, and that's wonderful. But it goes to my point that you have to understand your audience, and the same objective, and then the stories you tell will resonate differently. I use an example from my book let me tell you an objective story. Now, the matador's in the arena. The bull charges him. He sidesteps deftly and plunges the sword from above between the bull's shoulder blades, striking its heart and killing it instantly. Okay? Now, that's something you could record with a camera, and it's reality. Let's call it that. Okay? Now, let's say I'm telling this story to someone who's from Spain, who loves bullfighting. Then this story is about tradition, about excellence, being an impeccable warrior, about man versus raw nature and courage, all this good stuff, right? If I tell it to someone from PETA, that supports PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, they'll think this is disgusting animal torture followed by animal murder, and we're paying money to watch it, and it
Right.
should be ended immediately, right? The same story,
Right.
completely different interpretation of it based on the values of the tribe that I'm talking to. So the very first thing you have to do is figure out who's the tribe you're going after. Then do everything you can to understand their culture, their values, and then the stories you tell, the messaging you have, the features of your product or service that you talk about are going to resonate for them. And that is my biggest marketing, lesson for anyone listening today.
So my takeaway from this is it's a good thing that you appeal towards my tribe, because I mean, you pissed me off with the whole Apple versus Samsung thing.
Yeah,
and you pissed my wife off with the whole, killing a bull thing, because she's a PETA person.
Right.
And then I have a PETA dog, which is spelled PITA, which stands for pain in the, what. But that's a whole nother thing. That's a different kind of PETA. But the key thing that you jumped on right here, which is kind of pulling this whole thing together, is that what you're doing is you are controlling the narrative by knowing the narrative that the people want to hear, and speaking to them in the language that they
speaking
like.
Only to them and ignoring everybody else.
Right, exactly.
Because one of the biggest marketing mistakes we make is what I call death by and. We do this and we do that and we do that and you do that. And basically a brand is like jam on bread. You spread it thinly enough, you can't even taste it anymore past a certain point.
So what you're telling me is that, so if I just go create a click funnel and put out a great sales message, and I have a product that's going to solve everybody's problem, I'm not going to be a 7-figure coach this month.
It's funny how all these people are trading email lists for product launches. If they're all so successful, never mind. We're not going to go.
No. We're not going to go down there, because now you just pissed off another piece of my tribe.
Here you go. I mean, look, I came from the corporate world, so we work with marketing and companies, not these quick get rich quick schemes or funnel masters. Get my swipe sheet for free.
Yes.
Not that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, and that's so the key thing that we're trying to get across here is when we deal with the primal brain, I think I want to bring this to a head and summarize it, because we got about 8 minutes. So number one, there are certain things that we do, the bottom line is that human beings, we deal with smaller tribes, that we function better with that. We have more, we learn from it, we engage with it differently.
I'll put it differently. We can only function effectively in smaller tribes. In fact, our allegiance to the tribe, like I said, overrides our individual needs in many cases. We do stuff that's counterproductive to us in order to signal that we're good tribal members and loyal.
Okay, so that's one thing. In order to influence a larger group of people, number one, there has to be something in the core that those people already believe in, and then you basically have to kind of come as an afterthought to be able to get that message out and spread.
To activate their belief, their existing belief. So you're not trying to change behavior,
right?
You're actually trying to use the belief system as the motivation for action.
Exactly. And then, so the other thing too, is that by targeting, so in other words, using those two things together and talking to that, first and foremost, coming up with that niche, understanding who you're talking to with the bullfighting story, you're talking to the Spaniards, you're talking to their culture, you're talking to those things. You could sell them a specific t-shirt that, engages their pride and things of that nature. If they want t-shirts in the summer with bulls on it. But you got to find out that they want that first, and know that, and then understand it, and then provide them with something unique enough that they're willing to part with their resources to be able to do something with it, or you're solving a problem with it. So the thing that you're doing is you're trying to get the narrative in their head saying, you love bulls, you love bullfighting, you love Spain, you want to show your pride and be a great, a great Spaniard and promote bullfighting to your tribe. So buy this t-shirt is basically what we're saying.
Yeah. And by the way, there's nothing particularly noble about marketing. I mean, we're talking about it as if, it's curing cancer. It's not. I mean, like we're taking money from a person, and instead of putting in the bank account of one company, we're putting in the bank account of another company. So, I'm getting a little cynical and jaded about that. And I care more about kind of leveling the playing field and getting us out of the the black hat part of the industry and,
Well, yeah.
and towards more ethical behavior?
Well, I run into this all the time. It's like the people that sell, again, marketing is one piece of a big puzzle. It really is. I mean, because there's advertising, there's fulfillment, there's, everything that you have to do. And the problem is if you look at just advertising or just marketing or those things, and then when you break into marketing is a big picture thing. There's data gathering, there's SEO, there's website development, there's email marketing, there's social media, there's just a ton of different things. There is not one small piece that is going to make you successful, right?
Yeah, although I have to say I like putting things together by focusing on more universal. If there's one theme, if there's two themes you want to take away from today, one is understand your audience and design stuff for them, both the messaging and the products.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is focus and niching. And also, what's the best way to put this? Discipline to say no to a lot of things.
Right.
Yeah.
If
you put those together, you're going to have a successful business. You want a big business? That's a bunch of small focused businesses. That's why Berkshire Hathaway is a really valuable company, not because the Oracle of Omaha is so smart, is because he lets companies essentially remain independent in his portfolio and do their thing, what they do, which is they're doing really well.
Right. And that's essentially, if you sit down and look at Microsoft and you understand, this big, huge company, it is a bunch of micro businesses. I mean, and everything is run independently. I mean, LinkedIn is an independent business. It's owned by Microsoft.
Yeah. And within it, LinkedIn Learning, again, where I just launched my neuromarketing course, that used to be lynda.com.
Right.
Still basically operates independently.
Right. Skype is independent from Outlook. And Office 365 is independent from Windows. And they are all just a bunch of little businesses that solve a niche. But when you look at Microsoft, you see basically, the Death Star. But really what it is a bunch of little businesses that have been brought under an umbrella. And that's essentially what we need to think about is they're solving niche problems, right?
Yeah, it's really hard to build a worldwide brand like a Sony or an Apple or a Coca-Cola or a McDonald's. Okay, forget that. If that's your goal, just stop now. Let me save you the trouble.
Yeah, well, you could do it. It just might take you a couple hundred years.
Right. And on the time scale that we're living on, the global extinction crisis is going to happen before that, or the AI singularity when the machines take over. Either way.
Exactly. Yes. When Skynet comes in and then basically, I'll be back, it's not a tumor. Yeah. So, all right, man, this has been a blast. I want people to get to know how to get a hold of you. Talk about your book, talk about what you're doing. Went to me instead of you. So let me go to you. Here you go. So talk about you, talk about your book, talk about, it's Tim time.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. So I appreciate the opportunity. So as I mentioned, I ran an agency called SiteTuners for over 20 years, and I've sold my share of that, but I'm still doing solo digital marketing consulting, everything from strategy to ruthless website reviews to in-house training or advisory services for executives. So that's all at timash.com, along with my public speaking, which, as you can tell, I've done a little bit of. And if you're interested in my book, Unleash Your Primal Brain, Demystifying How We Think and Why We Act, that's available everywhere, but you get more info at primalbrain.com. For audio listeners, I narrated the audiobook, which makes it a lot of fun, and it's also available in ebook and paperback. I wish we could talk more. There's so much more in there. There's language, storytelling, culture, happy chemicals, addiction, memory, risk-taking, our highly social natures. All of that's in the book. I promise it'll help you as an individual, as part of whatever organization you're in, and definitely in business.
Well, if the book is half as good as the conversation we had today, I know it's going to be awesome. Now, I'm sitting here and I'm ripping it open if I can. Dude, this thing is packed well. So anyways, this is my unboxing of your book. There we go. And let's see, can I get it out of here? Oh, come on, baby. There we go. Woo. All right.
Woo!
I can't wait.
Got your own coffee.
I can't wait to dig into it, man. This is awesome. Thank you so much. So, hey, this is seriously, I could talk for like 4 hours, but our hour is up, man. And I really appreciate you. I'm going to have you back on the podcast because you've got a lot to offer. And we may do this again. I think there's so much that you brought to the table. You definitely made me think. I hope you made the audience think and just show us that there is so much to learn. that's one of my monikers is the day you stop learning is the day you stop earning, right? So we need to continually grow ourselves, and this is what this is all about.
Yeah, my buddy Dove Barron, I'd like to just shout out for another really fun podcast. He has one called Curiosity Bites. He's all about curiosity and learning. We had a 2-hour conversation on his.
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it. I could see where it could go. Like I said, for 4 hours, I could talk to you for many, many more because there's so many other, rabbit holes I want to go down. But unfortunately, we just hit 11 o'clock Chicago time, which is 9 o'clock your time. So I'm going to bid us adieu with our final, caffeine and pork, closing theme. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. Share it. Let people know about it. And we'll see you every Saturday morning with some great guests. Woo-hoo. Hey, man. Thank you very much. Coffee. Tim, thanks so much, man, for coming. I appreciate it, buddy. All right.
It was my pleasure, Brian.